Before we begin, let's just take a breath and settle into our bodies. In through the nose and sighing it out. And now think about this. Have you ever known exactly what you needed to change and still found yourself doing the same thing? The same habit, the same relationship dynamic, the same leadership pattern, maybe the same self-doubt, the same procrastination, the same fear. And maybe you've asked yourself, why am I still doing this? I know better. I've read the books. I've done the work. So why can't I change it? What if the answer has nothing to do with intelligence? And what if it has nothing to do with motivation? What if the system that's resisting change is actually trying to protect you? That's what we are talking about today. Hello, and welcome to the Aligned Human Project podcast, where consciousness meets creation and alignment becomes a way of life. I'm your host, Elgin, and today we're diving into one of the most misunderstood topics in personal growth, leadership, and transformation. Why growth feels so difficult, and why many people are trying to create a new life through a nervous system that was built to survive the old one. Let's start by dismantling something. Most personal development teaches change as a willpower problem. If you just try harder, stay disciplined, stay positive, believe in yourself, then you'll grow. But that explanation falls apart quickly because highly intelligent people get stuck. Successful people get stuck. Leaders get stuck. Therapists get stuck. Coaches get stuck. Spiritual teachers get stuck. Clearly, information is not the problem. We know way more than we embody. There is a massive personal development industry for a reason, because most of us are stuck repeating a pattern and we don't know how to change it. There are endless books. Heck, I even just wrote one myself. There are podcasts. You're listening to one. And there's courses. I put on tons. So what is the problem? The problem is all of these things often will give us awareness, but without the implementation. The problem is, myself included, is intelligence does not equal transformation. I'm a great example of somebody who's taken a ridiculous amount of courses and certifications and degrees trying to make sure that I'm worthy of my place. I've talked about it before in previous podcasts. I needed to have more information to feel like I deserved to take the role of a spiritual director and as a coach. So I was constantly wanting to learn more because it felt like the smarter that I was, the better that I would be, and the more transformation I would get. You're talking to somebody right now, or you're listening to somebody right now that literally took training in the science of mindful awareness, SOMA, to learn how to meditate. I became a certified teacher before a doer. Because for myself, it was like if I understood the concepts, the science of it, then I would be able to buy in to the feeling of it, that it wasn't just all in my head. But again, transformation is not the equivalent to intelligence. And the same goes for success. It's not as if, they're successful, so they have it all together. There is a big gap between those two things. Just because we're successful does not mean we have to have it all together. It just means that we're successful in one area of our life. Well, often we struggle with the same patterns as other people do. For years, I struggled with the same issues and patterns as others when it came to resentment, to not forgiving the past, to holding on to grudges, to anger, to fear, to frustration, to self-sabotage, to victimization or survival mentality. All of these patterns were there. Well, on the outside, my life looked incredibly successful. And the truth is, There's a difference between knowing and living. Those are very different things. I can know the things I need to do, but if I don't embody them, if I don't take them from here up in my head as I point to my head and bring them down into my heart so that they become a felt experience, then it's never going to last. It's never going to stick. And the honest truth with that is often consuming instead of acting is a way that we avoid. If I'm still learning how to do all of the steps, then I don't have to be doing them yet. Often healing, being on the healing journey, quote unquote, is an avoidance to actually healing. It's like we've just taken on a different identity. Now I'm on a journey of healing. But who will you be if you heal? Then what will you be doing? And it's a question most of us don't realize is actually stopping us from embodying and completely living the work. Preparation for that work ends up becoming a way that we protect ourselves. As long as I'm preparing, then I don't actually have to do it. And if I'm not actually doing, then I can't fail at it. So we do things such as one more certification. So the real question becomes, if knowledge is not enough, and it isn't, what is stopping change? One of the most important researchers in modern psychology, in my opinion, is Carol Dweck. Her work on fixed versus growth mindset fundamentally changed how we understand learning and achievement. She discovered that people generally approach challenges from one of two different orientations: fixed mindset, which is I am what I am. My abilities are fixed. If I struggle, then something is wrong with me. Versus the growth mindset, which is I can learn, I can improve, and mistakes will actually help me grow. It's incredibly powerful work. But I think there is a deeper question. Where does mindset come from? And don't get me wrong, if you read Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, then she will talk quite a bit about this, about how we build and create fixed mindsets versus growth mindset. When we think of fixed mindset, what often happens is we think of it as a character flaw, and that's dangerous. Versus if we were to actually think of it as a survival mindset, then we would understand that it is a experiential experience. So what I mean is nature and nurture. If you think that, oh, they've just got a fixed mindset, you think that's their nature. It's a fundamental flaw that they have and they cannot change. And all of a sudden, you're bad or you're less than because of this mindset that you have. But what if that fixed mindset is actually a survival mechanism, a survival mindset, which Dweck talks about in her book, Mindset? And if you were to think about it instead from this language, now it's experiential, it's nurture. In other words, it's a way that we protect ourselves in order to survive. And when I say survive, I'm talking about the big four that we're all trying to either get or keep, which is safety, security, belonging, and love. And so if you believe that you are loved by your family because you're so smart, and that is what they brag about you and they talk about you is your grades, then wouldn't trying something new that was harder and you getting a lower grade be a dire experience where you would fundamentally become afraid that you would no longer be loved or belong inside your family? Just think about that. If you're praised on your looks, what would it mean if something happened to you, if you were in an accident, or if you put on weight? Suddenly, your value in the family is directly depicted by something that can change. That is terrifying. So, of course, we go into a survival mindset and it becomes protection, fixed, over possibility, open, expansive, growth. And examples of this would be perfectionism, people pleasing, imposter syndrome, as well as overachievement. All of these things are trying for those big four, and they're part of survival mindset. Most people don't actually have a fixed mindset. This is who they are. What they have is a survival mindset. And survival mindsets create survival lives, survival relationships, survival leadership, and survival workplaces. But the moment awareness enters the system, choice becomes possible. And that is where alignment begins. This is where neuroscience, attachment theory, and my own personal work all begin to converge. Children absorb experiences long before they consciously interpret them. The developing brain is constantly checking in and asking, am I safe? Am I loved? Do I belong? Am I accepted? What happens when I make mistakes? And what happens when I disappoint people? What happens when I fail? Those experiences become emotional learning, and emotional learning becomes identity. Some examples of this are a child praised only for their achievement, a child criticized for their mistakes, both sides, a child compared to siblings, a child who learns love feels conditional, a child who becomes the peacemaker, a child who becomes the achiever, a child who becomes invisible. Those experiences become, if I succeed, I matter. And if I fail, I lose value. I have to prove myself. I cannot make mistakes. I need everyone to be okay for me to be safe. That's not just a mindset. That's survival. As I said, some of the adaptions that we take on in our childhood can be the achiever, the caretaker, the peacemaker, as well as the invisible child. Myself, I rotated between all of these. But the problem is adaption becomes identity. We say things like, I am, and then maybe it is successful in business, or an A student, or a triple A type personality and a control freak. These are all examples of overachieving or perfectionist behavior. The problem is if I'm attached here, then I'm not going to try something bigger or something new. I'm going to stay within my box. Because here I feel safe. Here I am given props, given praise. So in my own personal life, I was probably about just about 20 years ago now. My youngest son, my oldest son is actually my stepson, or my youngest son is my biological son. And I'd split from his father. I was living in a different town at the time, and I knew I was good at my job. At the time, my role was technically a purchaser for a building supply company, but I also handled receiving and inventory control and even helping with resetting areas of the store. And I knew I was good at it. I was well aware and praised for the parts of it that I did. So when I was given an opportunity to move to the city I live in now and still work for the company, but to open up actually a lighting showroom for them and start doing sales and lighting, that was uncomfortable. First off, I'd never done sales and didn't believe I'd be good at them. Second of all, I had a story that I didn't like people. And that was a very protective story that I had indeed. And so here's my bosses, and they're like, for reasons that kind of go beyond today, but reasons that they were like, we really want you to move up here. We think that this would be the best for you. We're wasting your expertise of you being in an office. And I was scared. I'm a single mom. And they promised me, they said, look, we'll do is we'll give you a base wage and we will bring you up. You will run this department, get it all set up like you normally do, and see if it works. And if it doesn't work for you, then we'll give you your old job back. So they gave me a safety net. And because of that, I got curious because I was still safe. So they gave me just enough to make me interested because I always like a challenge and I'm not good at being bored. And so they did just enough to kind of nudge me outside of my comfort zone, knowing I had the safety net, especially as a single mom. And so it made me willing to move forward. Now, I probably still hesitated a bit. But my ex-husband said I'd never be good at it, and it was irresponsible of me to take a job where I'd be at sales and making commissions. So I pretty much said, "Hold my beer and watch this." And because of that, it allowed me to move outside my box and move more into a growth mindset from the fixed mindset or survival mindset that I was in. So you can see how close fixed and survival are. Really, a fixed mindset is set by survival. I just prefer the word survival mindset because what it changes again is us looking at it from this is a characteristical flaw somebody has versus that this is experiential. And so when we say survival mindset, it allows the rest of us to come in, whether it's with ourselves, with our children, with our coworkers, with our friends, with our spouses, and have compassion because we understand it's kind of like Oprah Winfrey's work in her book, What Happened to You. Instead of saying, what's wrong with you, fixed mindset, we start to shift what happened to you, a survival mindset. So it changes the way we see each other, the way we communicate with each other, and the way that we're willing to hold space and gently nudge each other towards growth, holding each other accountable for our lives and the roles we play within it. See, if we switch that language, it's no longer an identity. We understand it's conditioning. And this is what we want to look for because conditioning can be changed. So, this is where survival mindsets become survival identities. Hmm. Now, let's go even deeper into the science here. One of the emerging understandings in neuroscience is that the brain functions largely as a prediction machine. It is continuously using past experiences to predict future outcomes. The brain isn't asking, what makes me happiest? It's asking, what keeps me alive? And the nervous system values familiarity. So even when familiarity is painful, and this explains something profound, people often choose familiar suffering over unfamiliar freedom, not consciously, biologically. What does that look like? It can look like staying in jobs, the devil you know versus the devil you don't. We make so many terms that we use without really thinking of what they mean and where they come from. And is that healthy? So staying in jobs, staying in relationships, it's just because it's comfortable. It's not all the passion and love that you dreamed of, but it's comfortable. You know it. Even staying in burnout. So many people stay unhealthy because they know that it's comfortable, even if they don't want to admit it. I remember about 10, no, it had to be longer than that, maybe about 15 years ago, one of the people that I worked with at the time, she ended up being diagnosed with cancer. And so she went into the cancer treatment at the hospital, and they talked to her and they asked her all about her life. And where was all the stress and dysfunction in her life? So they questioned her about her work, about home, about all of it. And she had a really dysfunctional relationship with her son who lived in her home, who she cared for, and was actually quite emotionally abusive towards her. And so they told her, look, it's really simple. We can cure your cancer, but if you don't change your environment, it's going to come back. When she came back and told us that, it really set something off of me where I was like, whoa, what does that mean? Now, remember, about 15 years ago is before I understood the beginning concepts of psychoneuroimmunology. I didn't understand that the thoughts that we think and the emotions that we feel directly impact the cells of our body. And this was happening in a cancer treatment facility in a hospital here in Canada. And this is the conversation they were having. So it made me think, is that why we do 5-year checkups? Because if a person hasn't changed the way that they're thinking and the way that they're feeling, then the cells will continuously come back and adapt or maladapt into a state of dis-ease based on their environment. And the truth is, we have to ask the question, why? Why would we stay in these dysfunctional relationships? Well, often because the nervous system is comfortable in its familiarity, even if that means being in a state of sympathetic or fight and flight all the time. We know it. It's why people stay constantly in a tizzy, constantly in a rush, and why being calm and getting quiet is difficult. Look at really high achievers, people that are constantly on the go, juggling families, juggling jobs, juggling all sorts of stuff. And they go on holidays, and it takes about the first 3 days for them to calm down, to even begin to enjoy their holiday, because it's so abnormal to them to be able to just relax. So I share this with you because a known pain versus an unknown possibility often challenges our feeling of safety. You see, every expansion requires some amount of discomfort. And we as humans have gotten into this horrific habit of not wanting to be uncomfortable. Think about it. We feel depression or anxiety. We immediately feel like this isn't right. I shouldn't feel this way. And we drug it. That's just the way Western science is now. We don't think, why is the energy of my body doing this? Because my training is different and I train through the 5 elements, the understanding in ancient traditional Chinese medicine is energy supposed to be flowing. It's got patterns and systems it needs to go through. And if it gets stuck in a certain area of our bodies, of our energy system, our field, then we're going to have an issue come up. But we don't look at it that way. We're like, this is uncomfortable and this needs to change immediately. Instead of leaning into some discomfort and checking in, like, what's really going on here? So instead, what we do is we keep doing the same old things that we've always been doing. And instead, we will take a pill for it. And then we'll identify with it. And we'll make it a limitation that stops us from expanding and stops us from changing. We'll even see it in leadership. It is what people know. This is where they're comfortable. This is the amount of feedback they like. And so they'll just stay exactly where they are instead of exploring and maybe. And I think part of that is because we have a fear of being wrong. So often when I am doing my own personal work and I'm listening to books and I'm, whether they're spiritual books or personal development books, psychology books, there are times that some piece of information comes in and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I totally did that." I'm doing this work after my children are adults. So that means that I do spend time calling my kids and apologizing. And it's not like I feel a great sense of shame or guilt because I did the best I could with what I had at that time. So why would I be upset with myself? Now I want more information and now I can go back and adjust it. Am I able to have these really cool conversations with my kids? I'm doing something else. I'm teaching them that they don't need to be perfect. And that when they become aware of something that they've done, now that they have new information, that not only is it safe to go back and apologize and adjust that information, but it actually creates a deeper connection with the person that they're talking to. We need to break down the illusion of perfectionism. There is no perfectionism. We're humans. If you were looking for perfectionism, we would stay in our spirit form. You see, growth mindset requires safety. And what I mean by that is that it's safe to make mistakes. It's safe to not be perfect. So to be able to do this, we actually have to take our guards down that we use to protect ourselves. We often armor up like warriors, and we do that to protect. But the protection itself is the illusion. Everything in science shows us that when we guard and protect ourselves mentally and emotionally, egoically, we're actually weakening ourselves and causing ourselves harm. So to move from a survival mindset towards a growth mindset, we require a certain amount of safety. And that means, at the very minimum, having our own back and showing where there are times it's okay to make mistakes. One of the easiest ones we can pull from is a baby learning to walk. When a baby tries to walk and falls down, we don't laugh at it and tell it it's a loser because it can't walk and tell it it'll never walk and it might as well crawl for the rest of its life. We help it get up. We show a baby how to put in the reps. We do the same with our toddlers when they're learning how to eat, learning how to explore, learning how to ride a bike. At what point do we change from this growth or learning mindset to something that's fixed, where all of a sudden making a mistake or not being perfect right off the bat is a problem? So, what we need to do is start reminding ourselves as times that we did grow and we did learn and it was safe, so that we can begin exploring those behaviors once again. Ancient Taoist wisdom saw this long before modern psychology. People adapt differently. So there's the 5 elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, I have an assessment you can take so you can learn a little more about what element you are, as well as within that, after you do the assessment, we send you kind of a description of all of the elements just to help you understand. It's one of the most ancient psychology systems that not only worked on the way we think, but the way that we feel. It works on our organs of our body, the issues. It completely aligns with what now in modern science we'd call psychoneuroimmunology. So within these 5 elements, we have one element that becomes a primary, and it sets by the age of 8. So if it's wood, we learn I must achieve. If it's fire, fire learns I must be liked. Earth learns I must take care of everyone. Metal learns I must be perfect. And the water learns I must stay safe. And eventually, these adaptions stop feeling like strategies and they start feeling like personality. And that's where people get trapped because they mistake the maladaption for identity. See, each of the elements have their survival patterns or their stress patterns. And for a wood, it's often achieving, proving, and its worth through success. The emotions linked with it are anger, irritation, frustration, often moving towards hostility and grudges. But those are maladapted behaviors. And we can be in adaptation or in alignment and still achieve things, but we do it from that healthy growth instead of worth through success. I'm already worthy of the next breath I take, of the space I take up, because I exist, not because of what I've done. Whereas our fire survival patterns are approval, connection, and a fear of rejection. And so the emotions linked with the fire element are joy. That's their main emotion. So they tend to be the greatest optimist, but it is joy as well as overjoy and panic. So often when we have a maladaptation within our fire element, it would look like manic behaviors, high highs and low lows. There is a chasing of excitement or fun, and there can be this fear of rejection. So often the doing and moving forward for approval and connection stops us from feeling like we could be rejected. Another habit that can come is keeping those relationships very much on an upper level where there's great connection and everybody loves you, but nobody truly knows you. For the earth survival patterns, it's often caretaking, rescuing, and over responsibility. And they often get set up quite young. It is linked with the feminine energy, so often linked with relationships with our mothers, linked with nourishment, linked with feeling nourished. Often the child will come out and start caretaking quite young, and so learn to please the family, making sure that everybody's happy and okay. The other side, just like all of them, there can be 2 sides, the yin and the yang. The other side on the earth element is often self-absorption, which means that when an earth element feels so undernourished that they become absorbed in their own lack of nourishment. So they feel like nobody is ever there for them. They're always there for everybody else. And they'll complain about their own wounds, their own hurts, their own issues that are happening because they're trying to get a feeling of nourishment that can go too far to the other side. Their emotions are worry and overwhelm or self absorption. And so often that worry and overwhelm can either be at other people, so worrying about what kids are doing, worrying about how other people are feeling, what are people going to think. Those are all places that the earth element comes into. Now, remember, we have all 5 elements within us. We have one dominant element. Some people will have 2, but it's rare. And so for myself, I'm a dominant wood element. Secondary is a fire element. And so when we see these elements, we can draw on all of them. It's not like as a wood element, I never caretake, I never rescue. I'm a protector. That is a normal personality trait for myself. I will protect the underdog. I will protect people that I love and care for. The warrior in me comes out hard. So, unlike a nourishing way, think more of a ready to go to war way. So here we've got worry and overwhelm, and it will come out through the stomach. And so often it will look at nourishment and so eating our feelings, as well as getting stomach aches when we are worried or overwhelmed about something that's going on or about to happen. Whereas the metal element, its survival behaviors are perfectionism, criticism, and control. So this looks like perfectionism to themselves as well as the need or the demand for perfection around. It also looks like criticism. It can come out as critical to others, often, at least internally, you might not see it, is self criticism. And so remember, we're talking about these mindsets. So the survival mindset becomes very fixed in if I'm not able to do this, I need to stay within this box and contained to make sure that I am appreciated and accepted, as well as control. So the emotions with metal element are grief and sorrow, and the journey becomes learning how to move towards acceptance and appreciation. Now, the water element. The water element's survival pattern is fear, hesitation, and safety seeking. They often look like people that have plan A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. They are always hypervigilant, trying to make sure that all of their I's are dotted and their T's are crossed, but it is less about perfection than it is about protection. So here we have a fear, and fear specifically of being seen. Water element will have great depths. They'll often hide what is really important to them or their wounds, the things that they are worried that people could take advantage of. They will hide those things underneath and often will show as a completely different element. Often the water element, even though it's their dominant, they'll show in personality quite often as their secondary element because it's safer. The journey for the water element, though, is to move from this fear and mistrust all the way over to faith and trust, to wisdom. And so all of these elements have beautiful journeys ahead of them, but these become the survival patterns that we see, which link in what Carol Dweck would call fixed mindset, that I refer to as survival mindset. The important thing here is it's just different strategies, but the same goal. And that goal is always to stay safe. And this is where the conversation becomes even bigger than just personal growth, because leaders recreate internally what organizations create externally. A perfectionist leader builds perfectionistic cultures. A fearful leader will build a fearful culture. A people pleasing leader builds unclear accountability. And a burnt out leader normalizes burnout. And this is why I often say people don't just recreate trauma in relationships, they recreate it in the workplace. They recreate it in their teams. They recreate it in their culture. You see, we are recreating ourselves everywhere. We can only create what is within us. Think about that. If I'm angry inside, I'm going to perpetuate or project anger outside. I am going to create environments around me where that anger is there, whether it's because it's being triggered or it's being reflected back to me. Either way, I'm the epicenter of my world. And I need you to hear that. You are the epicenter of your world. If you don't like how the world looks around you, pause, take note of what you don't like, and now go inward and see what you need to heal and release so that you can create a different world. Because it's all just energy, and energy is benign. And that energy is all interacting with each other. Those five elements are just five types of energy, and they're always playing off of each other, bumping into each other. It's a beautiful dance. And see, leadership just ends up magnifying these patterns. So, the perfectionist leader, if I have this critical perfectionism within me, not only do I require it for myself, maybe what will happen is I never complete a task because it's never perfect. Or maybe when somebody else does a task and it's at 80% or 90% or even 99%, I'm like, it's not perfect. It needs to be better than this. And so we create this environment that is stemmed from our own dramas and traumas that we haven't released. Remember, the journey, the healing journey, is really a journey of unlearning and remembering. So we have to unlearn these patterns and these behaviors. It's about releasing the baggage of the past. Those experiences happen, but we don't have to carry them with us today. We can take the wisdom from them and release the rest. And so every time that we're holding on to our traumas and dramas, they're unresolved in ourselves. They're unresolved in our psyche. And so we keep recreating them because we're trying to subconsciously get a different outcome. This is why if we have a fearful leader, so one that has a scarcity mindset, then it will create that scarcity all around us. People around them won't feel like their jobs are safe. They'll always be slightly worried. Is there enough money? Am I going to get laid off? What's going to happen? So if we don't feel safe, if we're full of fear, we will project that into our teams and create an environment around us that feels unsafe. If we have a people-pleasing leader, we will create either people that will use that, they will become very comfortable with it. Look, the truth is a lot of people will say to me, Dawn, my team is taking advantage of me. And the moment they say it, I will have a huge shit-eating grin on my face. And I will say, tell me more about that. How did your team start taking advantage of you? And it's like, oh, well, I was doing these nice things and these nice things for them. And I'm like, awesome. Why were you doing them? Well, I wanted to create this, family environment. So I, bought food, I did these things, and I was creating this family environment. And I'm like, oh, do you find in families that when people are handed everything that the children will often take advantage of it and start feeling like that is what they deserve and it should always be there? And at this point, usually my leaders will be like, oh shit. Yeah. I'm like, great. So if doing everything for our kids and not allowing them to fail forward, if we bring that into our teams and our workplaces, what are we teaching them? You see, the culture of our businesses, of our organizations, that always is a mirror to the leader itself. It's mirroring the nervous system of the CEO, of the owner. And so organizational trauma is often a recreation, and like attracts like. So you will get either a person who's a people pleaser and more people that will people please as well. So nobody feels safe to tell the truth because everybody's being told that it's only safe to please. Or you'll also get people that will abuse it. And so either way, you're attracting either people that will be like you or people that will use you. They don't know why they're doing it, but it sure is comfortable. And it all depends on their own upbringing. And the last piece of this is about emotional contagion. I talk a lot about emotional contagion within our organization because when we understand that when I come into work and I'm in a bad mood, that is something that I can perpetuate into the entire team. It's like releasing an illness. It's not good. But the opposite's also true. I can come in a fantastic mood, be extremely happy. People can be having all sorts of issues when I arrive, but that too can be a contagion. I can walk in and I'm in a great mood and they're having a hard time, and I work through some issues with them and their mood gets a little bit better. Because the truth is we are emotionally contagious. Just think about it. Why don't you like hanging around people who are miserable? Because often after a few minutes with them, you feel a little more miserable. Opposite goes. Why do we love spending time with people who are happy and optimistic? Because then we feel happier and more optimistic. But at the baseline, what we need to remember is that hurt people. Maybe you've heard that before. But the other side of that is that healing people inspire others to heal. Healing people, people that are doing their work to unlearn, to shift, to remember, well, they inspire others to heal. And that doesn't only include themselves, but the cultures that they're creating in their homes and in their businesses. The very first step in all of this work is awareness. Awareness creates choice. So once we become aware of our patterns, we have the choice. The choice then can help us create alignment. You get to make a choice every day. Do you want to perpetuate pain, or do you want to inspire people to heal? That is a choice that you have. This is why awareness matters. Awareness allows the witness to see the pattern. Once the witness within you sees the pattern, choice becomes available. That's the essence of field and form. The field changes first, emotions, thoughts, beliefs, and the form follows, actions, words, feeling. And if this conversation is resonating, make sure that you also listen to last week's episode, Why You Feel Lost, and what purpose really is. Because purpose and mindset are deeply connected. Many people aren't lacking purpose, even if they feel that way. They're still living inside identities that were built through survival. So now let's go ahead and head into an embodiment practice. Take a breath, come into your body, breathing in through the nose, sighing it all out and letting it all go. Beautiful. And as you keep slowing that breath down, I want you to ask yourself, where do I resist growth most often? Is it in success? Is it in visibility, leadership? Ooh, how about boundaries? Receiving? Or maybe it is in rest. Just think about that. Keep your breath soft and slow. Maybe you're closing your eyes. Maybe you're gazing soft. And now I want you to ask, what am I afraid would happen if I actually changed? Think about it and just listen to whatever answers arise. And I don't want you to let the answer come from your mind. I want you to listen. Go into the subtle answer. It'll be more like a whisper. And then ask, what small action would my future aligned self make today? Now, to take this one step deeper, I personally have made a sticky note with attributes of my future self. In other words, here I am doing this work and I keep it on my computer. So right now there's a sticky note with attributes that I would like to embody, that I would like to be part of who I am in the future. And maybe I have some of them now, but I'd like them to deepen. And so for myself, some of them are discerning, compassionate, forgiving, patient, intuitive, courageous, confident, curious, has clarity. So these are attributes that my future self has. And by having them there, I can imagine that future version of myself. And that is who I go to for mentorship. When I'm like, okay, what do I need to do here? I can get really quiet and ask my future self, who has embodied all of these characteristics, what steps do I need to make to get from where I am today to where you are in 5 years? What's my next step? It's a way of us remembering that our guru lives within us. And it helps us remember that we're not broken and we do not lack potential and we do not lack worth. See, your system adapted brilliantly to experiences that shaped identity, safety, and belonging. But adaptation is not destiny. Awareness creates choice. Choice changes the field. And when the field changes, the form follows. If today's conversation resonated, I want you to I want to invite you to take a free 5 element alignment assessment that I mentioned earlier. It will help you understand your stress adaptations, your leadership tendencies, your mindset patterns, your survival strategies, and where you may be recreating unconsciously a struggle, a suffering. Because self awareness changes everything. And if you're ready to go deeper, this is the work we do inside of Align Your Life, the Aligned Living and Aligned Operating System, as well as the Aligned Human Project, helping leaders and teams stop recreating survival patterns and start creating from alignment. If you're here to build a life that doesn't cost you your nervous system, to lead, love, and create from alignment instead of exhaustion, you are in the right place. This is Practical Spiritualism, and this is the Aligned Human Project. And this is where we stop rehearsing survival and we start practicing alignment. So keep pausing, keep feeling, and keep choosing, because you are the witness. You shape your field, and your field shapes your life. Until next time, you are not here to fix yourself. You are here to remember yourself. Because when you align with your truth, everything else begins to align with you. If this episode sparked something inside you, hit follow or subscribe and share it with someone walking their own path of awakening. And if you're ready to go deeper, you'll find free resources, programs, and community spaces waiting for you at practicalspiritualismco.com. Remember, alignment isn't a place you reach. It's a practice you live. So keep pausing, keep feeling, keep aligning. You are the field. You shape the form.